Welcome to another episode of the Weekly Crypto Check-In, recorded on May the 22nd, 2024. I'm your host, Robert Swarthell, and I'm joined by my co-host, Andres Sandate. How's it going, Andres?
Good, Robert. It's good to be back after a brief hiatus last week.
Yeah, week off and all the good stuff. I did a little bit of travel out with my wife to Montana to watch one of her younger sisters graduate high school. So that was a big deal in her world.
Well, there's been a lot of news over the last, it seems like 72 hours, maybe even 24 hours, but for sure, a lot of developments over the last couple of weeks in crypto land.
Yeah, absolutely. I was reviewing, kind of trying to come up with the list for what we were going to talk about. And I was looking at, so we hadn't done a show in 2 weeks. You know, there's going to be a ton of news. We're going to have to figure out to cram it in. The first week, I'm glad we kind of didn't do it last week. We would have had tons to talk about.
Yeah.
And then it has been made up for in, like you say, in a very quick fashion over the basically Sunday evening into Monday all the way through today. So I guess we should get going here. So something that happened last week is this first bullet point. SAB 121 stands for Staff Accounting Bulletin from the SEC. Basically, this is around custody of crypto at banks, a traditional banking institution. And this SAB 121, I want to say it's been around for 9-12 months. I think it kind of came out of the mess at FTX, if my understanding is correct. And it basically said that banks, if they wanted to custody crypto, had to account for them on their balance sheet in a way such that if for every dollar of crypto that was held, they had to hold another dollar in reserve. But it basically meant that no banks wanted to touch crypto. I mean, like no banks wants to have extra stuff they have to have a liability for. And this was, in my opinion, a way for the banking regulators that had a little bit more of a political bent to them to be anti-crypto, basically making the banks do this. So it was cool to see that repealed. I think the news really around that, not just that it got passed, it's waiting for the president to sign immediately. And it looks like that will happen. But the important part, I think, of all this is it's been pushed for by Republicans for a while. The Democrats came around in good numbers and supported it, and many prominent Democrat names. So it's not as much a partisan issue as it might have seemed at first. And it really sent a message, I think, up the chain of the Democrat party to be like, listen, crypto is an important thing. We don't want to lose our seats if you're up for re-election in the fall. And let's get in line here and kind of start figuring this mess out. So.
Yeah, I mean, last week, as you talked about, we didn't have a show, but I was doing a lot of reading on the headlines, and it did start to feel like last week you saw this gathering momentum around the topic of crypto being a swing issue, if you will, in the upcoming elections, and that ball continued to roll downhill, if you will, this week, where there's been even more headlines, and we saw, the White House even come out in I guess you could say more of a pro-crypto sort of stance. They're certainly not in favor, or at least are not posturing to be pro-crypto, but have backed off considerably in terms of their rhetoric and language over the last, just like you said, 48 hours. So this is how quickly, this is how quickly things can change.
Yeah, it's we'll get to the White House thing in a second, but it's pretty crazy. I had when the SAB thing was happening last week, and the kind of, I guess, early part of this week, people were trying to like think through it and just kind of like what it meant. And one way that I heard it broken down was, there's roughly 15 million people in the United States that hold crypto in some form. I think that's kind of comes from a Coinbase stat, but so you have 15 million people that are at least interested in it, right? I mean, they may not be huge crypto bulls, but they're interested. You can probably count them on less than one hand, so less than 5 people in the whole country that would vote for a president if he was anti-crypto. Like that person just doesn't exist. But the flip side is there's potentially millions of people that would vote in, if they came down to a single issue, they would vote for a president because they were pro-crypto. A couple of weeks ago, Trump did come out and say that, if he was reelected, he would pass crypto regulation. In fairness, Kennedy has also said the same thing. So it's really like they were pitted against Biden. I think Biden is probably potentially looking for ways to kind of not have all those issues be part of the political debate.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
we'll
and Trump's campaign did come out, I think this week, maybe today, and announced that they're going to accept a couple of meme coins for
Yes.
for donation. I think Shiba Inu and maybe Doge. So
yeah,
as we know politicians are pretty opportunistic and willing to jump on a trend, especially if it's going to gather momentum and make headlines.
Yeah. So I guess kind of proceeding to our second topic here, and this is a bit of there's a thread from SAB 121 through this ETH ETF news. So earlier on Tuesday, Eric Balahas, I forget how to say his last name, from Bloomberg. Yeah, so he's an ETF analyst, and he came out and said that from everything that he was seeing, he was changing his 25% chance that we had an Ethereum ETF approved tomorrow, being Thursday, changing it from 25% to 75%. That is one heck of a swing, and I think it probably caught everyone off guard in a positive way, except for the likely attorney at the SEC that had already written the denial letter. I imagine that had been written weeks ago. And then all of a sudden they had to start doing work. So apparently the SEC started reaching out to the different applicants and asking for revisions and doing all the work that you thought they should have been doing all along if they were actually going to approve it. So some of the minutia that I've kind of heard, and we'll have to see really what comes of it, is that the ETFs are not allowed to do staking. So there wouldn't be that cash flow component. If you want to call it cash flow, I think eventually that they do allow that, but I think up front they're trying to maybe make it more kind of fit the same mold as the Bitcoin one, which wouldn't have that anyways. So it's just, I don't know, it's crazy times to think that all of a sudden we could have an approval soon. It doesn't sound like they would start, if they're approved tomorrow, they would start trading on Friday. It's probably a couple weeks because they're still, they got to get everybody in line, because they did this over the course of a month for Bitcoin in rather rapid pace, but they're not going to do it in 2 days with Ethereum. So,
right.
Yeah.
It's remarkable how, how it was quiet for the better part of, a month, call it. Mm-hmm. And then in the matter of like the weekend or a couple of days,
right.
We saw this rush, if you will, of the issuers to go and update their S1s. And, clearly there's a lot of back channel communication happening. And then I even saw, just as a sub headline to this, the CLO, the chief legal officer of Ripple, came out and said at this point, it's no news maybe for you, Robert, and those that are crypto watchers and obviously crypto investors, but effectively just another, major executive saying that the SEC and Gensler is just a liability. Like at this point, is slowing down like a train that's clearly moving down out the station. And he being Gensler, stuck his neck out and was going to be the crypto savior. And now appears all the financial interests and many, many big financial players are saying, we're doing crypto and it's going to happen. And the SEC just looks, I don't want to say looks foolish. That's unfair, but just, it looks like they're a little bit on their back foot.
Yeah, the fascinating thing about that whole thing is when Gensler was teaching at MIT, he taught crypto. Like, he understood it. He talked very positive about it.
Yeah.
He said there needed to be regulation, all the things that you would think. I was so excited when he was selected as SEC chair, and goodness, I couldn't have been more wrong about him to this point. And I often wonder if he is executing someone else's vision for the SEC rather than his own. One might say it's Elizabeth Warren's vision when it comes to crypto, but all of a sudden it's almost like they told him to do, anti-crypto, and he's like, hold my beer, and goes off and just goes absolute crazy with it, to the point where he became a liability. And in many ways, my understanding is his ambition is he wanted to be the next Treasury Secretary, to the point where he may have blown that chance, if assuming Biden got reelected. But I don't know. It's just fascinating world. And hopefully we kind of get through that. So and we'll be talking about regulation here in the next couple points. I think that kind of ties back into this, but so we kind of start to get some more news about the top Bitcoin ETF holders. Kind of cool to kind of see different names popping up there.
Yeah, I saw some headlines. I mean, this is all back to the quarterly reporting that is done by some of these big investment firms or asset owners. But we're seeing like the state of Wisconsin Investment Board, the pension fund is a big owner of Bitcoin. Some very large asset managers, and the notion that this is maybe a do-it-yourself retail investor base obviously is changing quickly, and we're continuing to see more and more reports that BlackRock and the likes of BlackRock that advise a lot of these big institutional asset managers and asset owners are saying that it's more and more re-education. And you'd think that if the ETF, the Ethereum ETFs are approved and start trading in the next month or two, that's only going to continue.
Yeah, I was kind of blown away by a few of these numbers. So Bracebridge Capital, which manages the Yale and Princeton University endowments or portions of them, they reported holding 3 different Bitcoin ETFs: the ARK, the BlackRock, and the Grayscale ETFs for a collective $426 million. Like that's like serious. I don't care. I mean, those are big endowments, but like that's still, ironically, they're probably not even at 1% of the endowment, but it's still big numbers, at least in the crypto space. So
yeah, it's
pretty cool to kind of see that happening and kind of watching it unfold over time. So yeah, and I think that I had wondered up until these 13F filings started coming out, like, was it institutional? Was it more retail? Obviously, it was more retail than anything else at this point, but over time, I think institutions will certainly be a bigger portion than retail, and institutions just move slower. And
that's right.
They're rarely in a rush. So.
That's right. The capital tends to be stickier, and there's more of a strategic allocation. But by and large, when they initiate a position, it's in size. And like you said, 1% or 2% is a meaningful number when you're talking tens or even hundreds of billions of dollars. So there has to be enough liquidity in the underlying assets or security for them to initiate a position. But I also know the state of Wisconsin is a reputation for being a pretty forward-looking, forward-thinking pension fund and investment board when it comes to alternatives and call it non-traditional strategies. So it's pretty interesting to see. I would say not completely surprising that a group like them is, and Yale as well, which is, David Swinson, the famous and late David Swinson, which, was well known and is well regarded still as kind of the father of alternative investing when it comes to endowments. But the fact that these big kind of well-known forward-thinking institutional investors are investing in the in the space, I think they would likely have been the early adopters if there were. And now it'll be interesting to see is who else begins to try to get exposure. And like you said, I think it's maybe not the quickest moving group of investors, but when they do move, they move in size, and there's always imitators. So
yep, that's cool. Next topic. So this is a bit of a question / kind of surprise here, but the White House is for crypto regulation. Had we recorded the show last week, we would have said absolutely no chance.
Yeah.
Had we recorded the show Monday morning, still the same. I recorded yesterday, still the same. As of this morning, the White House put out a policy statement of sorts saying that they are for reasonable and sensible crypto regulation. Again, this is back to getting voters. You got to understand why they're doing this. And I'm kind of reading from a tweet from a guy named Adam Cochran. He's an attorney, a crypto attorney on Twitter, that kind of does a great job summarizing here. He says the language was sensible and identifies the tech as morally neutral, which up until this point, the Democrats' line has been only drug dealers and people doing bad stuff use crypto. It also kind of gives the ground for anybody that wants to.
Kind of hard to say that when these institutions like BlackRock and other major donors are writing checks to your party and in competitive House races up and down the ticket to say only drug dealers and immoral illegal activity is happening in crypto land. So yeah, I mean things are going to change quickly.
Yeah. And it also gives a pass to be a nonpartisan issue, which is great. Most things should be, and lets the politicians vote how they view crypto rather than on a party by party stance. So this happened this morning. There's also a bill being voted on today called FIT 21, I believe, that is a crypto framework that is trying to get passed through Congress. Granted, there was momentum with the SAB 121. There might be some momentum here, and the bill does need some work. I think it will first pass this. I think it's in the House right now, and then it would go on to maybe get some massaging in the Senate, and then potentially on it goes. I've been so for. We beat the regulation drum so many times, the drum is broken. This is catching me off guard immediately on how fast this might be happening. And who knows where the pressure's coming from to get it done? Is it truly the election? I thought there was no chance something would be passed in this summer and fall because it was political season, not the vice versa. It will happen because it is a political season. So it's just mind-boggling.
Well, I could see a scenario playing out. I mean, politics is, anyone's guess, right? But you could see a scenario playing out where a set of voter-friendly proposals or voter-friendly language comes out. And absolutely. I mean, crypto voter language comes out, which is somewhat to appease, get through the election, and then, announce whether it's I was just thinking the term crypto czar, somebody who can rally and has respect from kind of both sides to try to rally around, what to do. Because, the downside is depending on who wins the White House and how what happens in Congress, you may just have polarization, and who knows, we may not even have a settled election until the first quarter of 25, right?
Right. Yeah.
However it goes, it could just be uncertain. And so therefore the idea of getting legislation through in the first quarter could be tossed up in the air. And so who knows, like there's one thought process in my mind where it's like, this is all just to sort of appease voters who are on the fence, to not be afraid of, if you're anti-Biden, not be afraid of Biden. On the other hand, if you're pro-Democrat and pro-Biden, you have to sort of look at Trump's language around crypto and say he's for it. And what is the legislation going to look like? How quickly could they get something done? So I think it's a long shot that they do something between now and the end of the year. Because I just think it looks so obvious that they're trying to jam something through. But I do think the idea of, I just wonder if the idea of having a neutral, I don't know if there's word neutral works in DC anymore, but having somebody who could be looked at by the industry and by Congress as effective at getting sensible regulation in front of Congress in order to move the needle. Because I just wonder if Congress can do it, or if we need some, I don't know if it's a Larry Fink type person, but somebody that comes from industry that can, propel people to establish, even if it's stablecoin legislation to start.
Yeah. It'll be,
I'd be curious who you think that could be. Is there anybody in the industry that could do that? Because Jamie Dimon, he's announced this week that he's not going to stay at JP Morgan for 5 years, but I'm just thinking about somebody like that, over the next 5 years, who has the respect largely of the business community, largely the political community. Like, his next act, could it be to try to put in place regulation. Ironically, he was very against this.
Yes.
But it
well,
just feels like we need somebody that can kind of be the sort of Federal Reserve of crypto over the next 5 years.
It would not be Jamie Dimon. He doesn't want to talk about Bitcoin. He's made that clear.
No.
Larry Fink, I think he's too much of a salesman. And I like the work he's doing now. I don't want to distract him. And I might go off the beaten path a little bit. He's probably less recognized by the business community, but he is an attorney. John Deaton, who's actually running against Elizabeth Warren in Massachusetts or Maryland, wherever she's at. If he wins, obviously he'll get her seat. But I think that if he doesn't win, that could be an interesting thing for him to do, because he has the respect of the crypto community, like through and through. He's the one that represented 75,000 Amica representatives in the Ripple SEC case. And he has really built a brand. He's an attorney by trade, and he could be an interesting one there. I think that finding someone that the business community has a lot of respect for, but is also crypto savvy and understands it all, is going to be tough. That list is probably maybe 5 people, largely because most business people don't get crypto yet.
Yeah.
Deep enough. But there may be some other names out there that's not coming to mind. But I don't know. It's an interesting question. I'll have to think about that some more.
Yeah, well, so it kind of leads to the second to last point about crypto regulation coming soon. And maybe this is what we've sort of already talked about, but is your sense, I know that my view is that it's tough to think, we get something in place between now and November. Do you foresee a scenario where there's regulation, some type of regulation that's passed between now and the end of the year? 24.
Had you asked me this time yesterday, no chance. What's happened today with the bill that's going on, with the momentum last week from the SAB 121 vote, with the Biden administration's policy statement today being a little bit more thawed than I would have ever expected them to say. I don't know, 50-50 chances. Like, it's probably the best chances we've ever had. I think, I used to think it was better when Congress was a little more cooperative, but maybe now that everyone's cooperating because they want to get some votes. And maybe as a voter in a crypto person that cares a lot about crypto, maybe we can get something out of this rather than just some votes along the way. The bill, the FIT bill, does need some work, but I think that can get worked through. We first need to get through this first side of Congress to get the ball rolling. And I think there'll be enough pressure. If it can get through both houses, I think we can get a presidential signature, because he doesn't want to be the one that says no to 15 million people in the country.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's greater than 50. Maybe we'll give you 60-40. Ask me next week.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is something that could change in a matter of literally hours and days, like it did this week. So
yeah, I think they're voting maybe in roughly an hour from now. So we will know by the end of the day, at least, if it passed the first House portion, not the House, first half of Congress.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's definitely, I think one of the headlines I was going to say last week was just the amount of money that's being raised by the industry, that being crypto, that's going to fund competitive races. And when you're in a competitive race and you've got to raise money, you've got to do fundraising, you've got to run ads, and you start to go into the summer period where, you're looking 3 and 4 and 5 months out, you're going to start thinking about where the dollar is going to come from. And, the crypto industry has raised a lot of cash over the last 3 months, 4 months. And so they're going to be putting that to work, and they're going to put it to work in races where they think they have a chance to influence the outcome. And so in those House and congressional and Senate races where a candidate is pro crypto, you can expect that they're going to be leaning on their networks and contacts and their party to say, we need to get something done. So money talks in DC.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think I remember this name correctly. So there's a super PAC that's set up specifically by the industry. I think it's Stand with Crypto is the name of it. I need to double check that, but whatever the name is, they had raised like $80 million. So this is some like serious money, and they were going to spend it on both sides of the aisle. If the candidate is pro crypto and uses sensible ways to think about it, potentially there's some money there for them in their race. So, personally, I don't know if I'm a single issue voter right now, but I'm probably pretty close to it, given the choices that we have going forward. So, anyways,
so today is Bitcoin Pizza Day. This is one that it's just a fascinating sort of news. Just to go back and revisit, this transaction. Tell us the details.
Yep. So in 2010, May the 22nd, 2010, a guy named Laszlo bought two pizzas over the internet with Bitcoin using 10,000 Bitcoin. They were valued at the time, I believe, at 0.4 of a cent per Bitcoin. So obviously very little. Bitcoin had been around for, call it, a little over a year at that point. And so he basically bought two pizzas worth $40. And it was actually when I saw this, when this headline came back up today and it refreshed me, I'm like, man, a pizza in 2010 costing $20 a piece. That's like the prices today. Like, I don't know where he got these pizzas at, but they were
right.
Pizzas.
Yeah. Exactly.
Maybe the market maker in this case was had a little bit of spread there. Anyways, jokes aside, so he spent that, and he's done many interviews. This guy since then, typically yearly on this date, he ends up in the news, obviously. And he says he doesn't regret it. He was just a technology guy trying to find ways to use the Bitcoin that he was mining. If he still had those 10,000 Bitcoin today, they would be worth $700 million. So I'm sure, I see a picture here of those pizzas. They look good. I'm not sure they look like $700 million good. One looks like a cheese pizza and one looks like, there's a bunch of stuff on it.
But this was a transatlantic trade, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he was in the UK and the guy was in America, or vice versa. And basically it didn't happen like he didn't call Papa John's and offer them 10,000 Bitcoin.
Sure.
It was some guy in line, took his Bitcoin, literally called the local pizza shop wherever the other guy was at, the buyer, and ordered two pizzas to his house. So it was pretty cool. He's got his looks like two sons in the photo with him. So, they're a bit internet famous too, I guess, in that sense. But I tend to want to do pizza on days like this. So maybe I'll have some pizza tonight for dinner. So
yeah, no kidding. $700 million. Only in hindsight. So one thing that we didn't talk about is, with the news around these Ethereum ETF, the spot Ethereum ETF products potentially getting approved, let's call it over the next month or so. Bitcoin's had a little bit of a rally over the last week.
Yeah, I think there was a bit of a rally into late last week.
Yeah.
But more of the rally that has come the last few days was the SAB 121 vote, and just general positive news around crypto.
Yeah, positive.
Crypto can be, kind of at the whim of whatever the winds are. And lately the winds have been not so great over the last, call it, month and a half. But some positive wind came through, and it looks like it might be turning into more continued wins in that sense. So
April was a tough month. Generally speaking for the industry, but it does seem, that at least over the last, call it, week or so, that there's been some rallying in a number of the tokens, especially Bitcoin, which I saw touched 70,000 at one point. This week. So,
and on the topic, one thing I forgot to mention about the ETF, the Ethereum ETF, or potential of, is, there was a lot of interest in the Bitcoin one, a lot of pent up demand. A lot of people know the brand outside of crypto, know the brand of Bitcoin. That is less so for Ethereum.
Right.
But Bitcoin also had that sell off for roughly 7 to 10 days following the launch. I think that was largely due to there was a bunch of bankruptcies happening, and there was a bunch of creditors trying to get out of those products that were held in those estates. That hasn't happened or couldn't happen in the Ethereum case, because there's no product they could have been holding. So it'd be interesting to kind of see. I don't think that it's a buy the news and buy the rumor, sell the news event. But I don't know. There won't be nearly as much demand, I wouldn't think, at least on a dollar basis.
Yeah, I think the average investor that owns only Bitcoin,
right,
in terms of crypto in their portfolio,
yep.
I'll be interested to know do they actually know about Ethereum?
Or can they even say the name?
Right.
Like,
So
right.
it's going to
Yeah,
be, it's
they
going
don't
to
know
be
it.
a fun summer. It's going to be a fun summer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have
Yeah.
something to talk about next week, so maybe there's some more
That's
news.
right.
So awesome.
That's right. Well, it's good seeing you.
Good to see you. Yeah. So thanks for joining us on this episode of the Weekly Crypto Check-In. If you want to stay updated on future episodes, and you can find us in any podcast player by searching Teton Crypto Capital or Weekly Crypto Check-In. Take care.